Hello everybody, CVH here, and today we just got an announcement from Bethesda on the January seasonal reward card for the Elder Scrolls Legends, so I thought what better time to do a video on it just in case you haven't seen the news already, introduce you to the card, talk a little bit about my first impressions, the pros, the cons, how it might impact what decks currently exist, and any implications for the future of the meta. So without further ado, let's get right into it. If you haven't seen the announcement yet, the card you see on screen in front of you is the monthly reward card for January 2017, the first 2017 monthly seasonal reward card. Stampede, Sentinel, 6 cost, 6 magic cost, 7 attack, 7 health, breakthrough, and with the effect that you can't be damaged by actions or supports. So basically, I've already seen a lot of talk about this card. This basically just sums up everything you can say about it. He will smash things. But I've seen a lot of talk about this card on Reddit and other places like Twitter, just discussing their other people's first impressions. And I've seen a lot of talk even about, like, hopefully it's not overpowered. So the first thing that really comes to mind, as you can see here, Bethesda and Direwolf note this as well. The first thing you notice when looking at Stampede Sentinel are his cost and stats. 6 Magicka 7/7s don't come around very often, and of course with the added benefit of breakthrough, so if you're attacking a 7/7 into a 1/1, you're going to be dealing 6 points of face damage. So definitely a pretty solid aggressive card. Unfortunately, 6 Magicka is pretty expensive, and we do see, this is worth, sometimes it's forgettable, but we do see in strength, in red in the game, a lot of creatures that have very powerful stats for their cost. Notably Blood Dragon, which is a 5 cost 5/7, which is pretty fantastic for a 5-drop by itself, with the very relevant effect of being able to attack creatures in either lane and ignoring guards for, killing off whatever you want or pushing face damage, which is often where Blood Dragon goes. So, with the effect of you can't be damaged by actions or supports, I do think people are kind of overvaluing this effect right now. The first thing worth noting is that Dark Rift and Gladiator Arena, which are the two supports that are most apt at dealing face damage and most played, did just get nerfed yesterday, so those are already seeing a lot less play than they had in the past. And even so, it says it at the bottom, the Sentinel is particularly well suited at fighting Prophecy Battle Mage, one of the most popular decks on the ladder right now. His ability stops Dark Rift, Gladiator Arena, Lightning Bolt, and Crushing Blow from hitting you in the face. Crushing Blow is sort of moderately playable in the deck. Dark Rift, I've seen most people take it out. Gladiator Arena have been cut from a lot of the versions, so if you strictly analyze what this really means, this card on the board basically says, my aggro battle mage opponent can't lightning bolt me in the face while this is on the board. That being said, aggro battle mage is a very, very fast deck, so I don't know if I would call any 6-drop that doesn't impact the board immediately particularly well suited at fighting any aggro deck, but that's what they said here. So I think people really undervalue the importance, and I was talking about this a little with Doggy Mystic, which is a card that doesn't impact the board immediately when you play it, and it has to attack to get its benefit. Now, this card doesn't have to attack to get its benefit of you can't being damaged, you're not being able to be damaged by actions or supports, but the fact of the matter is it is a 6 Magicka card, which is still relatively expensive despite it having, above average stats, and it doesn't impact the board immediately when you play it. Guards do impact the board immediately when you play them, against an aggro deck at least, because for an aggro deck, it immediately puts a wall up in at least half of the board in at least one lane that they have to remove immediately. If you're playing a 6 Magicka 7/7, despite its stats being good, aggro battle mage isn't really going to care about those stats. It can just attack around it, essentially. If they already have 2 things in the lane, you plop down the Sentinel, and they're like, okay, well, I can't lightning bolt my opponent's face while that's on the board. Either if I have an efficient answer like a silence or a cast out that I want to play, that's one thing, but if not, I'll just hit my opponent with all my creatures. And Stampede Sentinel, while it has amazing stats, is only going to be able to attack one of those creatures at a time. This card does remind me a lot of Child of Hersine, which is a 6-drop 6/7 in strength, and it has the ability whenever you destroy a creature with it after attacking, you can attack once again in the turn. So Child does not impact the board when you first play it. It is the same cost red card, and it does have good stats. 6/7 is almost as good as 7/7, obviously, without breakthrough, but when you're up against a lane of those aggro creatures, if you happen to be almost to the point of stabilization, being able to power through a bunch of those at once seems more relevant to me than not being able to be damaged by actions or supports. Now, of course, this card is fantastic when you happen to be at a sub 4 life, like 1, 2, or 3 life, or 4 life even, and you're attacking for game through a couple runes against aggro battle mage, or any deck with blue, basically. It basically says, my opponent can't sack out that lightning bolt in the rune as a prophecy and just kill me when I'm trying to kill them. And that is something that I think, after playing the game for a while, all of us have lost to at least once, is the old prophecy lightning bolt when I'm at 4 or less health. So that part is good, but I do sort of not really see this card being effective against the decks that its effect is effective against. I see this card more, if that makes any sense to you guys. I don't really think the effect matters. I think it's mostly just a 6-drop 7/7 beat stick with breakthrough, which it has merit. I could see this card in some Archer decks, for example. Solarist Marshal recently got pushed to 6 Magicka, and while it can reduce the next card you play by 6, people are looking for other alternatives and just playing a bunch of threats. There are versions of the deck that already run Child of Hersine, already run Pomerat Renegade, Snowy Sabercat, Blood Dragon's an inclusion in most of them. So this card, if you're looking for another giant threat, seems pretty good. I don't think it really has much merit against aggro, despite its effect being good against the one aggro burn deck of the format right now. But I do think if you're looking for like a very mid-rangey deck with just more threats, so that's the thing, right? Because like the threats themselves, one by one, are easily answerable by control cards like Piercing Javelin, Edict of Azura, Manacora. But the whole idea of a mid-range deck with a bunch of these threats is that eventually they run out of answers to deal with the string of them. So adding this card, it's just one more card they have to have an answer for in a control deck. Against an aggro deck, the aggro decks typically have much fewer answers to it, but the ones they do have are incredibly efficient, like Shrieking Harpy and Cast Out, and the best answer they have to these kind of threats is just being in any sort of favorable position on the board already, and they watch you sacrifice your tempo by paying 6 Magicka for a 7/7 that's not threatening to kill them immediately, and they just attack through it. Doesn't matter, they're just gonna keep rushing your face. Very easy to race when you pay 6 Magicka for a turn and it doesn't immediately do something on the board. So I do think this card has merit in some mid-range decks. I don't really know if it fights aggro too much. I think it's better against control personally, just because it's another giant threat that has to be answered, and it trades evenly with Nahagli, which is, if you look through all the cards that I just mentioned, Snowy Sabercat, Renegade, Blood Dragon can just attack through a Nahagli, but doesn't need to be guarded at all. And even the Child of Hersine at 6/7, this 7/7 does trade evenly with Nahagli, which is just one relevant thing that it could matter in a competitive setting like the latter, where Nahaglies are everywhere. So that being said, I know I've been kind of harsh on the card, but I think it was slightly overrated to begin with. I do think, besides Histgrove, this card is easily better than every other monthly card we've seen since August. The Dagirak Renegade, the Dagirak Mystic, the Smuggler's Hall. Well, Smuggler's Hall is pretty good right now in certain decks, but Smuggler's Hall, Battle Reeve, and the Mechanical Ally, which had some interesting deck building implications, but didn't really stack up to much. At least for a 6-drop, this is 7/7. Like, we could see this in some mid-range decks already, and moving forward, maybe it could be useful for its effect otherwise. But I do think, despite me being a little bit negative about the card, and as far as playability compared to what other people have said, I am excited about it, but for a lot of reasons that I don't think I've seen mentioned much, which is Arena. In Arena, this card is pretty threatening. Child of Hersine's already a really high pick for me in Arena. 6-drop 7/7 is huge. This is a card that I would pick a lot of the time when I'm drafting Strength, especially considering the relative weakness of a few of the other epics in Strength. I think this card's going to be pretty impactful in Arena, and this is a format that they have to consider when they make cards too. Like, as constructed players, as most of us are constructed players primarily, if you're following my stream or my channel, you probably know that I'm primarily a constructed player, but Arena is a very important format that most new players play more than Ladder, I would have to imagine, because it builds their collection. So they have to think about the Arena meta, and I think this is a pretty powerful card. I think introducing this into the Arena meta is going to it's going to have a much bigger impact than introducing Battle Reeve of Dusk into the constructed meta, basically. And it definitely has more of an influence than introducing Battle Reeve of Dusk into the Arena meta, because it's just not very good in Arena whatsoever. So this is a card that's very straightforward, very powerful, on curve, and that's just how Arena operates a lot of the time. So those are my thoughts. Hopefully you've enjoyed. If you hadn't seen the card before, hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight into how it might be used. I don't personally think this card will be seen in too much right off the bat. Like I said, mid-range Archer is kind of the only place I would want to test it right off the bat. Control decks in red might have a use for it, but I think they'd rather just play Blood Dragon, and they don't really exist right now. That's the main problem with control decks in red. Aggro decks, I don't think I want to play a 6 cost in any aggro deck that I've seen currently. Orc decks curve out at Wood Orc Headhunter, and Triumphant Jarl is like the only thing at 6 that really sees play just because it refills you with immediate damage. Stampede Sentinel, not immediate damage, but it seems like a very powerful mid-range card to me in Archer. So, I don't know, where do you guys think it fits? Let me know in the comments below if you think I'm too harsh on the card, if you think I'm not, if you're excited to draft it in Arena. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.